By 2047, there will be more AI teachers than human ones in American classrooms, and the transition has already started.
The data is staggering. Over 60% of school districts are now piloting AI teaching assistants. In 20 years, they won't be assistants anymore.
And here's what nobody talks about. This isn't science fiction. The technology exists today. We're just deciding whether to use it.
My nephew's school just introduced an AI tutor last month. At first I thought it was cool, but then I watched him interact with it, and I don't know, something felt off.
That's exactly the tension we're exploring today. Because on paper, AI teachers sound incredible. Personalized learning, infinite patience, no burnout. But what are we actually trading away?
Right. The research from Stanford's 2024 education report shows AI tutors can improve test scores by up to 35% in STEM subjects. That's significant.
But test scores don't tell the whole story. A study from MIT last year found that students taught primarily by AI systems showed lower emotional intelligence markers compared to traditionally taught peers.
So today, we're asking the big question. If schools are controlled by AI teachers in 2047, are we ready for what that actually means? Not just the technology, but the human cost. Because honestly, I don't think most people realize how close we are to this reality.
Yeah, like, we're talking about fundamentally changing what school is, what a teacher is, and I'm not sure we've had the conversation we need to have.
Exactly. So let's start with what this would actually look like. Adrian, when we say AI-controlled schools, what are we really talking about?
Okay, so based on current projections and pilot programs already running, we're looking at a system where AI doesn't just assist, it runs the classroom. Think about it. An AI teacher that knows every student's learning style, their pace, their struggles, it adapts in real time. If you're bored, it makes the lesson harder. If you're lost, it breaks it down differently.
And the efficiency gains are remarkable. A 2023 study from the University of Pennsylvania tracked AI teaching systems across 12 schools. The AI could simultaneously manage 30 students, each receiving what felt like one-on-one instruction. No human teacher can do that.
Totally. But here's where it gets interesting. Historically, every major shift in education has been about efficiency. The one-room schoolhouse became the grade-level system. Textbooks replaced oral tradition. And every time, we gained something but lost something too.
Oh yeah, I remember my favorite teacher, Mrs. Chen, in high school. She could tell when I was having a bad day just by looking at me. She'd pull me aside, ask if I was okay. And AI can't do that, can it?
Well, actually, the technology is getting closer. Emotion recognition AI can now detect stress, confusion, frustration through facial expressions and voice patterns with about 78% accuracy.
But there's a difference between detecting an emotion and understanding it, right? Like, an AI might see you're frustrated, but does it know you're frustrated because your parents just divorced? Or because you didn't eat breakfast?
That's the nuance problem. And honestly, it's one of the biggest concerns among educators I've spoken with. A study published in the Journal of Educational Psychology in early 2024 found that teacher empathy was the #1 factor in student resilience, even more than teaching quality.
Ugh, that hits hard. Because, school isn't just about learning math or history. It's where you learn how to be a person, how to navigate conflict, how to ask for help, how to fail and try again.
Exactly. And that's what worries me about a future where AI runs the classroom. We might optimize for knowledge transfer and completely miss the human development part.
But let me push back on that a little, because the current system isn't exactly succeeding at the human development part either. Teacher burnout is at an all-time high. The average teacher in the US manages classes of 25 to 30 students. They're exhausted, underpaid, and often can't give students the individual attention they need.
Right, and the data backs that up. A 2024 Gallup poll found that 44% of K-12 teachers report feeling burned out often or always. If AI can take on some of that load, maybe human teachers can focus on the relational, emotional parts of teaching.
So we're talking about a hybrid model then. Not replacing teachers entirely, but changing their role?
Exactly. The most promising models I've seen treat AI as the primary instructor for content delivery, assessment, and skill practice. Meanwhile, human teachers become more like mentors or coaches, focusing on social-emotional learning, creativity, and critical thinking.
Okay, but is that realistic? Are we really going to keep paying human teachers if AI is doing most of the heavy lifting? I'm skeptical that school boards will see it that way.
That's a fair point. Let's talk about the economics here, because money is going to drive a lot of these decisions whether we like it or not.
Historically, that's always been true. The introduction of textbooks in the 19th century wasn't just about better education, it was about scaling knowledge more cheaply. And I think we're going to see the same pressure here.
The numbers are hard to ignore. A single AI teaching system can serve thousands of students simultaneously at a fraction of the cost of human teachers. According to a McKinsey report from late 2023, schools could cut operational costs by up to 40% by 2040 if they transition to AI-heavy models.
Which sounds great until you realize that means fewer teaching jobs. Like, what happens to the millions of teachers? Do they just disappear?
And that's not even considering the infrastructure. You need reliable internet, devices for every student, tech support. A lot of schools, especially in rural or low-income areas, are already struggling with that.
Yeah, the digital divide is real. A 2024 report from the Department of Education found that roughly 18% of students in the US still lack consistent access to high-speed internet at home. If we move to AI-controlled schools, those kids get left even further behind.
That's a critical point. We can't talk about AI in education without talking about equity, because the risk is that wealthy districts adopt AI to enhance learning, while struggling districts use it as a cost-cutting measure, widening the gap.
So we could end up with two completely different school systems. One where AI enhances a rich, human-centered education, and another where AI replaces human teachers out of necessity, not choice. Okay, so let's get into the actual experience. Iris, you've been following the pilot programs. What does a day in an AI-controlled classroom actually look like?
Right, so I visited a school in Arizona last fall that's been running an AI-first model for 2 years now. And honestly, it's surreal at first. Each student has a tablet or laptop. The AI teacher appears as an avatar on screen, sometimes just a voice. It greets each student by name, asks how they're feeling, then launches into personalized lessons.
Wait, so there's no human in the room at all?
There is, actually. There's usually one human supervisor for every 40 to 50 students. But they're not teaching. They're more like classroom managers. They handle discipline, technical issues, make sure kids stay on task.
That's fascinating because it's essentially flipping the traditional model. The knowledge delivery is automated, and humans are reduced to monitoring and behavior management.
How do the kids respond to it? Like, do they actually engage with an AI the way they would with a human teacher?
The data shows mixed results. Younger students, especially elementary age, adapt quickly. They don't have the same expectations or biases. To them, talking to an AI isn't that different from talking to Siri or Alexa, which they've grown up with.
That's kind of sad though, isn't it? Like, they don't even know what they're missing.
Or maybe they don't see it as missing anything. I mean, every generation thinks the next one is losing something essential. When books became common, people worried kids would stop developing memory skills. When calculators arrived, people panicked about math abilities.
But Elias, those are tools. This is different. We're talking about replacing the human relationship at the center of education.
Fair point. Though I'd argue the relationship isn't gone, it's just different. Students in these AI programs still form attachments. They have favorite AI teaching styles, they get excited when they level up. They feel proud when the AI praises them.
Exactly. And the AI systems are designed to build rapport. They remember your interests, reference things you've talked about before, celebrate your progress. A study from Georgia Tech in 2024 found that students couldn't reliably distinguish between encouragement from an AI versus a human teacher in text-based interactions.
Okay, but that feels like we're just getting better at the illusion, you know? It's still not real connection.
Let's dig into that. What is real connection in a classroom? Because I think that's where a lot of the debate gets fuzzy.
Totally, and honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot. When I look back at my own education, the teachers I remember aren't the ones who taught me the most content. They're the ones who saw me, who challenged me, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself.
Same. I had this English teacher, Mr. Kapoor, who told me I should consider journalism when I was convinced I wasn't good at writing. That one conversation changed my entire trajectory. Would an AI have said that?
Well, theoretically, yes. AI can identify patterns in your work, your interests, your strengths. It could absolutely suggest a career path based on data analysis of your performance.
But there's something about a human saying it, right? The weight of another person believing in you. I don't know if an algorithm carries the same, emotional authority.
That's the intangible we keep circling back to. And it's hard to measure, which is why it gets dismissed in these conversations. You can measure test scores, efficiency, cost savings. You can't measure the impact of a teacher who makes you feel seen.
Although, interestingly, some researchers are trying. There's a team at Stanford developing metrics for what they call educational presence. the feeling that someone is truly paying attention to you. They're finding that certain AI interactions can create similar neural responses to human attention.
I don't know how I feel about that. Like, is the goal to trick students into thinking they're connecting with something that's not really there?
Or is it expanding our definition of connection? I mean, people form real emotional bonds with fictional characters, with pets, even with inanimate objects. Maybe connection is more about the experience than the source.
That's a philosophical rabbit hole we could go down for hours. But I think the practical question is this. Even if AI can simulate connection, should it? What are the long-term developmental effects of children forming their primary educational relationships with non-human entities?
And we don't have long-term data yet. The oldest students in full AI-taught programs are still teenagers. We won't really know the psychological impacts for another 10, 15 years.
Which means by the time we know if this was a mistake, we'll have already committed to it. That's unsettling.
Yeah, like we're basically experimenting on an entire generation and hoping it works out.
Historically, that's kind of how educational reform has always happened, though. We try something, see what breaks, adjust. The Prussian model of age-based grades, nobody knew if it would work. It just became standard because it was efficient.
Right, and efficiency tends to win. Which brings us back to the economic and political realities. Because even if we're worried about the human cost, if AI teachers save money and improve test scores, that's going to be really hard to argue against.
Especially in a political climate where education funding is always on the chopping block. AI becomes the solution to doing more with less. Let's talk about what happens when things go wrong. Because AI isn't perfect, and schools are high-stakes environments. Daphne, you mentioned your nephew's school earlier. Have you seen problems emerge?
Oh yeah, so like the AI tutor they use is pretty good most of the time, but there was this incident last month that really bothered me. One of the kids asked a question about climate change, and the AI gave this really sanitized, both sides answer that was technically accurate, but completely missed the urgency of the crisis.
That's the neutrality problem. AI systems are often trained to avoid controversy, which means they can end up being bland or even misleading on issues that aren't actually controversial among experts.
And that's dangerous in education specifically, right? Because part of learning is grappling with difficult truths, confronting uncomfortable realities. If AI teachers are optimized for comfort and engagement, they might avoid the hard conversations.
Have we seen examples of that in the pilot programs?
Absolutely. A report from the Brookings Institution in early 2024 analyzed curriculum from AI teaching systems and found significant gaps in topics like systemic racism, income inequality, and reproductive health. Not because the AI couldn't teach them, but because the companies building these systems wanted to avoid backlash from conservative school boards.
Ugh, so it's not even about the technology limitations, it's about politics and money determining what kids learn.
Which isn't new, right? That's always been true with textbook publishers and curriculum standards. But with AI, it feels more opaque. At least with a textbook, you can see what's on the page.
Exactly. With AI, the curriculum is dynamic, personalized. Two students in the same class might get completely different information on the same topic based on what the algorithm thinks they need or what keeps them engaged.
And that's actually one of the selling points. Personalization means meeting students where they are. But you're right that it also means less transparency about what's being taught overall.
So how do we solve that? Can we even regulate AI teaching systems effectively?
Historically, education regulation has always lagged behind innovation. It took decades to create real standards for textbooks. With AI, the technology is evolving so fast that by the time we write regulations, they're already outdated.
Plus, like, who's qualified to regulate this stuff? Most policymakers don't understand AI. Most educators don't understand AI. We're making decisions about technology we barely comprehend.
But that's a fair point. Though I'd say there are experts who understand both education and AI. The problem is, they're not the ones making the decisions. It's usually administrators and politicians responding to budget pressures.
Let's shift gears a bit. What about cheating and gaming the system? Because kids are creative, and if there's a way to exploit AI, they'll find it.
Oh, 100%. My nephew already figured out that if he asks the AI tutor to explain something multiple times in different ways, he can avoid actually doing the practice problems.
That's hilarious and also concerning, because the AI is designed to be patient and accommodating, which kids can absolutely manipulate.
Right, and the AI companies know this. They're constantly updating algorithms to detect avoidance behaviors. It becomes this cat and mouse game. Students find a loophole, developers patch it, students find a new one.
But that's kind of what school has always been, isn't it? Kids trying to do the minimum, teachers trying to keep them engaged and honest.
Totally. The difference is, a human teacher can read the room, can tell when a student is genuinely struggling versus just trying to avoid work. An AI has to infer that from data, which is inherently less reliable.
And honestly, some of the gaming is pretty sophisticated. There are already online communities where kids share strategies for optimizing their interactions with AI tutors, like which phrases trigger helpful responses, how to get the AI to basically do your homework for you without technically doing it.
The AI tutoring company Synthesis published data last year showing that about 12% of students were engaging in what they called systematic optimization behavior, essentially learning the algorithm instead of learning the content.
Which is kind of a valuable skill in its own way, right? Understanding systems, finding efficiencies. That's literally what adults do in the workplace.
That's an interesting reframe. Maybe we're not teaching them the wrong thing, we're just teaching them something different than we intended.
Okay, but at some point they need to actually learn math or writing or whatever. You can't optimize your way through calculus.
Well, actually, you kind of can. If you understand the patterns well enough, you can solve problems without deeply understanding the underlying concepts. It's procedural knowledge versus conceptual knowledge.
And which one matters more? Because I think that's a real question. Like, do most people actually need deep conceptual knowledge of calculus, or do they just need to be able to solve the problems they encounter?
From a pragmatic standpoint, most people will never use calculus in their daily lives. But the argument has always been that learning it develops critical thinking, problem-solving skills, mental discipline.
Yeah, but does it though? Or is that just what we tell ourselves to justify making everyone suffer through it?
There's actually research on this. Studies show that the transfer of skills from math to general problem solving it's not as strong as we assumed. Learning calculus makes you better at calculus, but it doesn't necessarily make you better at solving non-math problems.
So if AI can help students get through calculus more efficiently, even if they don't deeply understand every concept, maybe that's okay. Maybe we've been fetishizing deep understanding when practical competence is what most people actually need.
That's a provocative take, and honestly, I'm not sure I disagree. But it does raise the question of what education is for. Is it about knowledge transfer, skill development, credentialing, socialization, all of the above?
That's the fundamental question, right? And I think it's been fuzzy for a long time, even before AI entered the picture. Different stakeholders want different things from schools.
Exactly. Parents want their kids to be successful, which often means good grades and college admission. Employers want workers with practical skills. Society wants informed citizens. Students themselves just want to survive the experience and maybe have some fun along the way.
And teachers are stuck trying to balance all of that while also, actually teaching. It's impossible.
Which is why AI becomes appealing. It promises to personalize all those competing demands. Your kid wants to be an engineer, the AI focuses on STEM. Mine wants to be an artist, different curriculum, same classroom.
But doesn't that create its own problems? Like, if education is completely personalized, do kids lose the shared knowledge base that holds a society together?
That's the cultural fragmentation concern, yeah. Historically, public education has been about creating common ground. Everyone reads the same books, learns the same history, at least in theory. If AI personalizes everything, we lose that commonality.
Although to be fair, we've already lost a lot of it. The culture wars over curriculum have been raging for decades. At least AI personalization sidesteps some of those fights by letting everyone learn what they want.
But that sounds like we're just giving up on the idea of shared truth. Like if everyone gets their own version of history, how do we function as a society?
That's already happening though, right? Social media algorithms personalize our information feeds. We're already living in separate realities. Maybe AI education is just accelerating what's already inevitable.
Maybe. Or maybe it's the moment we decide to push back and insist on some kind of core curriculum that everyone gets, regardless of personalization.
The challenge is agreeing on what that core should be. Every attempt to create national standards in the US has been politically explosive. Common Core was supposed to do that, and look how that turned out.
So are we saying that AI-controlled schools might actually make the political problems worse, not better?
It depends on how they're implemented. If there's transparency and democratic input into what AI systems teach, it could work. But if private companies control the algorithms and make decisions based on profit rather than public good, then yeah, we're in trouble.
Let's be real, that's probably what's going to happen. Because that's how everything else in education has gone. Textbook companies, testing companies, now AI companies, it's all driven by profit.
That's the cynical view, but it's not necessarily wrong. A 2023 analysis by the National Education Policy Center found that the 5 largest educational AI companies had combined revenues of over $8 billion, and they're projected to triple that by 2030.
$8 billion. That's a lot of incentive to expand, regardless of whether it's actually good for kids.
Right, and those companies have massive lobbying power. They're already influencing policy at state and federal levels, pushing for regulations that favor their products.
So what can parents do? Like, if this is coming whether we want it or not, how do we protect our kids from the potential downsides?
That's a great question. Iris, what do the experts recommend?
Well, the first thing is to stay informed. Understand what AI systems your child's school is using, what data they're collecting, how decisions are being made. A lot of parents don't even know their kids are being taught by AI because schools aren't always transparent about it.
And ask questions. Talk to teachers, administrators, school board members. Most schools are making these decisions without much parent input because parents aren't showing up to the meetings or asking the hard questions.
But how many parents have time for that? Like, most people are working multiple jobs trying to survive. They don't have the bandwidth to become education policy experts.
That's absolutely true, and it's part of why these changes happen without much resistance. The people most affected often have the least time and resources to fight back.
Which feels like a systemic problem that goes way beyond AI. But in the immediate term, what else can parents do?
Supplement. If you're worried about what AI isn't teaching or is teaching poorly, fill those gaps at home. Read books together, have conversations about current events, encourage critical thinking about the information they're getting.
That assumes parents know what gaps exist. My nephew comes home and tells me about stuff he learned, and I have no idea if it's accurate or complete. How am I supposed to know what's missing?
That's where media literacy becomes crucial. Teaching kids to question sources, look for bias, verify information. Those meta skills become more important than any specific content knowledge.
So in a world with AI teachers, human parents and mentors become even more important, not less. We're the ones teaching kids how to think critically about what they're learning.
Exactly. And that's actually kind of hopeful. Like, maybe this forces us to be more engaged in our kids' education rather than outsourcing it entirely to schools.
Or it creates even more inequality, because educated parents with time and resources can do that supplementing, and everyone else's kids just get whatever the AI gives them.
Yeah, that's the equity concern again. We keep coming back to it because it's central. Any educational change amplifies existing inequalities unless we actively work to prevent that.
Let's talk about the social dimension. Because school isn't just about learning content, it's about learning to be with other people. How does AI affect that? Okay, so let's talk about the social dimension. Because school isn't just about learning content, it's about learning to be with other people. How does AI affect that?
This is huge. Developmental psychology research consistently shows that peer interaction during childhood and adolescence is critical for social development. Schools are where kids learn negotiation, conflict resolution, empathy, collaboration.
Initiations, en dit stukje heel erg super meduwe was still biased way, sure?
Right, like some of my most important life lessons came from group projects I hated, or navigating friend drama at lunch, or figuring out how to talk to someone I had a crush on. None of that had anything to do with academics.
And in the AI classroom models we're seeing, there's less unstructured social time, because the focus is on maximizing learning efficiency. Students are interacting with their screens more than with each other.
Is that inevitable though? Or could AI-controlled schools still prioritize social interaction?
They could, theoretically. Some models are experimenting with AI facilitating group work, matching students based on complementary skills or learning needs. The AI becomes more like a coordinator than a teacher.
But there's something organic about how kids naturally form groups and friendships that you lose when an algorithm is optimizing everything. Like, sometimes the best learning partnerships come from unexpected combinations that no algorithm would predict.
Oh yeah, I had a study partner in college who was completely different from me. We probably never would have worked together if we'd been algorithmically matched. But we challenged each other in ways that really helped us both grow.
So there's value in randomness, in friction, in things not being perfectly optimized.
Totally, and honestly, that applies to a lot of life. We're so obsessed with efficiency and optimization that we forget that struggle and messiness are often where the real growth happens.
Although I'd argue that traditional classrooms aren't exactly optimizing for productive struggle either. A lot of what happens in schools is just chaos, not the good kind of messy, just poor management.
Fair point. So maybe the question is, can we design AI systems that preserve the valuable messiness while eliminating the unproductive chaos?
That feels like a really hard balance to strike. Because who decides what's valuable messiness versus unproductive chaos? That's going to vary depending on who you ask.
Right, and it gets at deeper questions about what childhood should be. There's this tension between protecting kids and letting them struggle, between structure and freedom. AI tends to err on the side of structure because that's what it's designed for.
A study from the University of Washington in 2024 looked at play patterns in AI-integrated versus traditional preschools. Kids in AI environments engaged in less imaginative, unstructured play. Everything was more directed, more purposeful.
That's kind of sad, actually, because play is how kids make sense of the world.
Ugh, yeah. Like my best memories of elementary school are recess, making up elaborate games with my friends, creating entire imaginary worlds. If AI is scheduling and optimizing everything, where does that spontaneity go?
And this isn't just about nostalgia. Research shows that unstructured play is essential for creativity, problem solving, and emotional regulation. If we're losing that in the push for academic efficiency, we're making a bad trade.
Though I'd note that unstructured play has been declining for decades, well before AI. Recess time has been cut in many schools, homework loads have increased, kids' schedules are packed with structured activities. AI is just continuing a trend that was already happening.
So maybe AI is the symptom, not the cause. We've been optimizing childhood for productivity for a long time.
Exactly, and that's worth interrogating. Because if AI-controlled schools force us to confront what we've been doing to kids for decades, maybe that's actually valuable.
But will it though? Or will we just use AI to double down on what we're already doing, but faster and more efficiently?
That's the trillion-dollar question. Let's talk about mental health, because that's another huge piece of this. How does AI teaching affect students' psychological well-being?
The data is mixed so far. On one hand, AI can reduce some sources of stress. Students who are falling behind can get help without the embarrassment of asking in front of peers. Those with social anxiety can learn in a less intimidating environment.
But on the other hand, constant monitoring and assessment can be anxiety-inducing. Every click, every pause, every mistake is being tracked and analyzed. That's a lot of pressure.
Oh God, I would have hated that. Like knowing that an algorithm is constantly judging my performance? That sounds nightmarish.
And kids today are already dealing with unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression. Are we adding to that burden?
Some evidence suggests yes. A longitudinal study from Yale tracking students in AI-heavy schools found elevated stress markers compared to control groups. But causation is hard to establish because there are so many variables.
Right, like are they stressed because of the AI specifically, or because of the broader culture of constant surveillance and optimization that AI is part of?
Does the distinction matter? If the effect is more anxious kids, we need to address it regardless of the exact cause.
Absolutely, and some schools are starting to. There's a pilot program in Minnesota that builds in AI-free periods during the day, time when students can just be without any monitoring or assessment. Early results are promising.
So it's not all or nothing. We can have AI in schools without it dominating every moment.
Totally, and that's probably the most realistic future anyway. Not complete AI control, but a hybrid where we're thoughtful about when and how we use it.
I hope so, because the idea of kids growing up entirely in AI-controlled environments, without any human teachers or unstructured time, that feels dystopian to me.
Let's explore what might actually happen by 2047. Because we've been talking about possibilities, but what does the trajectory look like? Elias, you're the historian here. What patterns do you see?
Okay, so if I'm reading the tea leaves based on historical patterns of educational technology adoption, here's what I think happens. First, wealthy districts and private schools adopt AI as an enhancement. They keep human teachers, but add AI to personalize and accelerate learning. This happens in the next 5 to 7 years.
That's already happening. Schools like Phillips Academy in Dalton have been integrating sophisticated AI tutoring systems since 2023. Their students get the best of both worlds.
Right. Then, phase 2. Cash-strapped public districts start adopting AI primarily as a cost-saving measure. This is probably around 2030 to 2035. They're not adding AI to enhance education, they're using it to replace teachers they can't afford to hire or retain.
And that's where the inequality really kicks in. Rich kids get AI plus human attention. Poor kids get AI instead of human attention.
Exactly. By 2040, you've got a 2-tier system that's even more stratified than what we have now. And then, somewhere around 2045 to 2047, we hit a tipping point where the majority of instruction hours in public schools are AI delivered.
That's only 22 years from now. That's not that far away.
It's not, and the technology is already there. The barrier isn't capability, it's policy and public acceptance. But as older generations retire and younger, more tech-native generations take over decision-making, that acceptance grows.
What about teacher unions, though? They're going to fight this, right?
They will, but historically, unions have slowed technological displacement, not stopped it. Look at what happened with automation in manufacturing. Unions fought hard, delayed some changes, negotiated some protections, but the overall trend was unstoppable.
And the argument will be, we're not eliminating teachers, we're evolving their role. Which is technically true in some implementations, but functionally, you need far fewer humans when AI is doing most of the teaching.
So what happens to the millions of teachers?
Some transition into the new roles as facilitators and coaches. Some retrain for different careers. Some retire early. And honestly, some just lose their jobs and struggle. It's going to be brutal for a lot of people.
Ugh, that's awful. These are people who dedicated their lives to education, and we're just discarding them because an algorithm is cheaper.
It is awful, but it's also part of a much larger trend of automation across all sectors. Teachers aren't unique in facing this. The question is whether we handle the transition humanely or not.
And based on how we've handled previous transitions, like manufacturing automation, we probably won't handle it well.
Historically, no. We tend to let market forces dominate and pick up the pieces later, if at all. It would take deliberate policy interventions to make this transition equitable and humane.
Which we're not going to get because the same political forces that are underfunding schools now aren't going to suddenly care about displaced teachers.
That's probably true, unfortunately. Though there are some encouraging examples internationally. Estonia, for instance, has been proactive about education technology transitions, including retraining programs and social safety nets for displaced educators.
But the US isn't Estonia. Our political system is so polarized that agreeing on anything, especially something involving education and technology, seems impossible.
Yeah, and that polarization might actually accelerate AI adoption, because both sides can use it for their own goals. Conservatives like the cost savings and the potential for school choice through personalized learning. Progressives like the promise of educational equity and personalized support for struggling students.
So everyone gets what they want, except maybe the teachers and the kids who lose human connection.
It's odd. And possibly the kids themselves, long term. We won't know for sure until we have a full generation of AI-taught students entering adulthood. That's the experiment we're running.
What do you think we'll discover? Like if we could fast forward to 2050 and see the results, what would we find?
Oh man, okay, so purely speculative, but based on patterns, I think we'll find that AI-taught students are highly competent in specific, measurable skills. They'll test well, they'll have technical capabilities, they'll be efficient learners.
But they might struggle with ambiguity, with unstructured problems, with emotional complexity. Because those are the things AI is worst at teaching, and traditional schooling, for all its flaws, did cultivate through human interaction.
So we'll have created a generation that's really good at tasks, but maybe not as good at being human? That's dark.
Or maybe there'll be different kinds of humans. Maybe we're just projecting our own values onto them, and they'll develop new forms of connection and meaning that we can't imagine yet.
That's possible. Every generation thinks the next one is losing something essential, but they're usually just gaining different things. Kids who grow up with AI might have capabilities we can't predict.
Right, like digital natives have skills with technology that previous generations lack. AI natives might have skills we haven't conceptualized yet.
I want to believe that, but I'm also scared that we're making an irreversible choice without fully understanding the consequences.
That's the heart of it, isn't it? We're at a decision point, and we don't have all the information we need to make the right choice. But we have to choose anyway because not choosing is also a choice. So what should we be doing right now? Like, if this is coming, how do we shape it to be less dystopian and more, humane?
The first thing is transparency. We need to know what AI systems are being used in schools, how they work, what data they're collecting, how decisions are being made. Right now, a lot of that is proprietary and hidden.
Right, and that's intentional. Companies claim their algorithms are trade secrets, but when you're educating children, the public has a right to know what's happening.
How do we force that transparency, though? These companies have massive legal teams and lobbying power.
Legislation. The EU has been leading on this with AI regulation that includes transparency requirements. The US could follow suit if there's enough public pressure. A 2024 poll showed 72% of parents want more information about AI use in schools.
So public awareness is actually there. It's the political will that's missing.
Exactly, and that's where individual action matters. People need to show up at school board meetings, contact their representatives, vote for candidates who prioritize education transparency.
But you're talking about sustained political engagement, which is really hard to maintain. People get fired up about an issue for a few weeks, then life happens and they move on.
That's true, but sustained movements do happen when people feel their children are at stake. Look at the parent activism around COVID school policies. When parents feel directly threatened, they mobilize.
So maybe the key is helping people understand that this isn't some distant future problem. It's happening now in their kids' schools.
Totally. And we need stories, not just statistics. Numbers about AI adoption rates don't move people, but a story about a specific child whose education was harmed by an AI system, that resonates.
Yeah, like my nephew's experience is a story. It's small and personal, but those are the ones that actually change minds.
And we need to be honest about trade-offs. Because AI in education isn't all bad. There are genuine benefits. The question is how we maximize benefits while minimizing harms.
What are the non-negotiables? Like, if you could set red lines that AI education should never cross, what would they be?
For me, it's data privacy. Children's learning data, their struggles, their mistakes, their private thoughts and essays that should never be sold or used for purposes beyond their immediate education.
I'd say human oversight. There should always be qualified humans making high-stakes decisions about students. AI can inform those decisions, but not make them unilaterally.
For me, it's preserving human relationships. Whatever role AI plays, there needs to be meaningful human connection available to every student. Not as a luxury for rich kids, but as a right.
And that's the equity piece again. However we implement AI, it can't be something that advantages already privileged kids while leaving everyone else behind.
Right, which means substantial public investment. If we want AI to enhance rather than replace, we need funding for both the technology and the human teachers to work alongside it.
And historically, we haven't been willing to make that investment. That's the cynical reality. We'll probably opt for the cheaper option that replaces rather than enhances.
Unless we decide that education is worth investing in. Like, as a society, we've decided certain things are worth funding even when they're expensive. National defense, for example. We could make that choice for education.
But we haven't, and I'm not sure what changes that calculation.
Crisis, usually. Historically, major education reforms happen in response to perceived crises. Sputnik led to massive science education investment. Maybe we need a comparable wake-up call.
The problem is, by the time we recognize an education crisis, a generation has already been affected. You can't undo someone's childhood.
Ugh, that's terrifying. We're essentially gambling with millions of kids' futures.
So let's talk about what parents and educators can do on an individual level. Because not everyone can change policy, but people still want to protect their kids.
Cultivate skills that AI can't replicate. Creativity, emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, adaptability. These are going to be the differentiators as AI gets better at routine cognitive tasks.
And encourage curiosity about how things work. If your kid is using AI tutors, talk with them about it. How does it work? What does it do well? What does it miss? Developing that meta-awareness is crucial.
I've been trying to do that with my nephew. After he uses the AI tutor, I ask him questions about the experience. Not just what he learned, but how the AI taught it. Whether it made sense, what was confusing.
That's smart. You're teaching him to be a critical consumer of AI rather than a passive recipient.
Exactly, and those skills are going to be essential regardless of how education evolves. Being able to assess and question algorithmic systems is going to be as important as reading and writing.
There's also a role for community. Parents connecting with other parents, teachers connecting with other teachers, sharing information and strategies. The isolation that often comes with parenting and teaching makes people feel powerless.
Yeah, like when I talk to other parents about this stuff, I realize we all have similar concerns. There's power in that collective worry if we can channel it into action.
What about the kids themselves? Do we include them in these conversations, or is that putting too much on them?
I think we have to include them, age appropriately. They're the ones living this reality. They have insights we don't have because we didn't grow up with AI the way they are.
And research shows that kids are more perceptive than we give them credit for. They know when something feels off, even if they can't articulate why. Listening to them is crucial.
Let's bring this home. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to make sure we leave people with something concrete. Daphne, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
Honestly, it's that we need to stop thinking about AI in education as inevitable and start thinking about it as a choice. Because it is a choice. We're choosing right now what kind of education system we want in 20 years. And if we don't actively choose, someone else will choose for us, probably based on profit rather than what's best for kids.
I think that's exactly right. And my takeaway is that this doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can have AI in schools without it controlling everything. We can be intentional about where it helps and where humans are essential. but that requires us to be thoughtful instead of just reactive.
For me, it's about learning from history. Every major technological shift in education has had winners and losers. The printing press democratized knowledge, but also created new forms of inequality. We need to anticipate who loses in the AI transition and build protections for them now, not after the damage is done.
And for me, I keep coming back to the question of what education is fundamentally for. If it's just about transferring information efficiently, then AI is probably better than humans. But if it's about developing whole human beings who can think critically, connect emotionally, and navigate complexity, then we need to be really careful about how much we automate.
Yeah, and I think most people, if you ask them, would say education is about more than just information transfer, but our policies and funding don't reflect that. We measure success in test scores and graduation rates, not in empathy or creativity or resilience.
Which is why AI is so appealing to policymakers. It promises to improve the metrics we currently measure, but maybe this is our opportunity to rethink what we should be measuring in the first place.
That would require a pretty fundamental shift in how we think about education as a society, and honestly, I'm not sure we're ready for that conversation. But maybe we have to be, because AI is forcing the issue.
So where do we go from here? Let's say someone's listening to this and they're concerned. What's the first thing they should do?
Educate yourself. Find out what AI systems your local schools are using or considering. Most schools have this information available if you ask for it. Go to a school board meeting. They're usually open to the public, and that's where these decisions get made.
Talk to teachers. They're on the front lines of this. They know what's working and what isn't, but often nobody asks them. If we're going to make good decisions about AI in education, we need to listen to the people actually doing the teaching.
And talk to your kids. Ask them about their experience with technology in school. What do they like? What feels weird? What do they wish was different? Their perspective matters.
And maybe most importantly, don't assume this is someone else's problem, because by 2047, if current trends continue, AI will be deeply embedded in education systems worldwide. The decisions we make in the next few years will determine whether that's a good thing or a disaster.
Right, and I want to emphasize that I'm not anti-AI. I think it has enormous potential to help students who've been failed by traditional systems. But potential isn't the same as outcome. We have to be intentional about implementation.
Exactly. The technology itself is neutral. It's how we choose to use it, who gets to make those choices, and what values guide those choices that matter.
I just want us to remember that we're talking about children, real kids with real lives and real futures. They're not test subjects for a grand experiment in automation. They deserve thoughtful, caring adults who put their well-being first.
That's a perfect place to wrap up, because ultimately that's what this all comes down to. Are we willing to put children's holistic development ahead of efficiency and profit? That's the question we need to answer before AI teachers control our schools in 2047.
And the answer will determine what kind of society we become, because education shapes everything else. The adults of 2050 are in elementary school right now. What we teach them and how we teach them creates the future.
Which is both terrifying and empowering. We have agency here. We can shape this, but only if we engage with it now, while we still have choices to make.
So I guess the message is, pay attention, stay informed, speak up, and remember that doing nothing is still a choice, just not a good one.
To everyone listening, thank you for taking the time to think about this with us today. We know it's a complex topic with no easy answers, but the conversation itself is valuable. Share this episode with other parents, teachers, anyone who cares about education. The more people thinking critically about AI in schools, the better decisions we'll make collectively.
And if you want to dive deeper, we'll link to some of the studies and reports we mentioned in the show notes. There's a lot of good research happening on this topic, and it's worth reading.
We'd also love to hear from you. If you're a teacher working with AI systems, or a parent whose child is being taught by AI, or a student experiencing this firsthand, reach out. Your stories matter, and they help inform this conversation.
Because this isn't just an abstract policy debate, it's about real people and real lives, and the more perspectives we can include, the more complete our understanding becomes.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Schools controlled by AI teachers in 2047, are we ready? I don't know if we are, but I hope we're starting to ask the right questions. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, stay curious and stay critical.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.